Hi everyone, my name is Lisa Conlan and I teach just outside Edinburgh at Lasswade High School, and so it's a secondary school, but I will relate to hopefully Key Stage 3 as well as BGE, which stands for Broad General Education in Scotland. So I'm not used to using Teams, so bear with me while I share my screen. Hopefully it will work. Okay, now fingers crossed everybody can see.
Yes, I can see that, Lisa.
Thanks, is what I can see. Okay, so I thought today I would focus on BGE, so that's S1, S2 and S3. So for Key Stage 3, obviously that's year 7, 8 and 9. And picking out one activity that I use Digimap for schools in for each year group. And really looking at the theme of place. So linking all three together, really it's place that we're looking at, which links quite nicely obviously into the maps. So my next slide is something that I've adapted from actually another teacher. I can't take all the credit. And it was from a Royal Geographical Society CPD session that I went to, where the teacher, and apologies, I don't know her name, but she had created a curriculum map like this one, and I've adapted it for what we are doing here. It's still in progress, so it is evolving. I do sort of tweak it every now and again, but starting with S1, we're trying to think of themes and then key questions per topic. So we've narrowed it, I keep changing it. So finding our way is basically map skills, but trying to make it sound a bit more interesting and relevant. I did have it as becoming a geographer, but I think I'm going to change it back to put finding our way, with the overarching question is, how do we navigate our world? So that's kind of like your fertile question, CPD on that. And then fieldwork sort of dotted throughout as well. I really need to make sure that's throughout BGE and to get them outside, because that's what geography is about, isn't it? So we've got fieldwork in the school reference just initially with S1. The next topic for S1 is protect our planet. So I've just planned that and just taught it through once, and it seems to be fine. Thinking about Lake District National Park, thinking about Yosemite National Park and UNESCO sites. So that's a new one. And ideally next year, S1 completing the John Muir Award. So again, that's sort of in planning stages, because they've changed their award as well. So they're running online sessions like this over the next couple of months to update you. So if you're interested in John Muir Award, I would Google John Muir Trust, and then there's some information there to help you with that. So that's our plan. S2, we move through into violent volcanoes, which I'm going to link to today with the mapping of Arthur's Seat. And then ideally a dynamic Earth field trip. Again, we haven't done it for a few years now, but that's what I would like to see happen, which is in Edinburgh. And then we look at Wish You Were Here, which is bringing in can we holiday sustainably and travel and tourism, because we also offer travel and tourism in S4 for Nat5, so that would be GCSE. And then into S3, again, I keep tweaking this to try and see if I can make it better. So we change timetable at the beginning of June. So I do a wee topic just for those sort of 3 weeks called Looking Outwards. So how does life change across the world? And that's sort of a poster task on a country of their choice. So the success criteria is specific, but they do it for the country they've chosen that they want to research more. Then after summer, we'll look at rivers to oceans. I think I might change that to rivers to seas and oceans, and looking at can we control Earth's water. So we look at Scottish Studies as a qualification. So that's the rivers bit. And then I'm going to tweak the oceans to look more at, again, tourism along coastlines, maybe renewable energy, the plastic pollution. So I think I'm going to tweak that. And then we also look at earthquakes and tsunamis as well. So yeah, that's something I want to work on. between now and then. And then looking at development and health, I think I want to bring into S3. So how has life around the globe improved? And looking at a bit of the Nat5 course of malaria, maybe cholera, things like that. So, because there's a lovely documentary film called Mary and Martha. I don't know if anybody watches it, but it was the Red Nose Day a few years ago. They made the film, and that's really good. So that's malaria. So it's called Mary and Martha, and that's a good film to watch. So I think I want to bring that in. And then for us, SP means senior phase. So then they would go into S4, so Nat5 and GCSE as well. So what I'm going to focus on is just give you a wee example from S1, S2 and S3 of how I've introduced Digimap for schools. And also I'm a single person department. So part of this is also how I do it to help non-specialist teachers teach map skills as well. So I'll move on, if it's going to move on. Here we go. So let me just check my notes to make sure I've said everything. Yeah, so the first example is from S1 Finding Our Way, and the background of the screens, I have a different picture for each topic. Sometimes it's one like this one, sometimes it's my holiday snaps that go in the background just to link with the topic that we're studying and learning about. So this example, I actually wrote an article for the Geographical Association's Teaching Geography journal, and it's in the autumn 2017 article, journal copy, sorry, so autumn 2017 on page 100. So if you want to know more about this activity, about geocaching, which we're about to go on to, it's in that article. Okay, so autumn 2017. So this is where, normally at the end of the topic, the students practice all their skills by creating a geocache around the school grounds. Usually not inside because they can be a little bit noisy, but generally speaking it's outside. So I break down the activity. So in pairs, you'll be creating your own geocache in the school grounds for others in your class to find. So they would work in pairs, and then I would join them up into fours, and they have to find each other's geocache. And the Digimap comes into the map of the whole school grounds. Decide where you're going to hide your geocache. So I have zoomed in on Digimap for schools enough to get as much detail as possible for our school grounds. And you can see it just no more takes in. So we're a centre. So there's Lasswade High School, but then it's the centre. We've got a library, swimming pool. So the swimming pool's just cut off, but that's technically out of bounds for June lessons. So we would focus on the playing field. The grey section in 0350 is the car park. The grey section in 0249 is the AstroTurf. And then they've got the wee pond in 0348. So I would take them outside and we would use our map skills like orientated map, reviewing and using grid references. So I've inserted, or I think when you go to print on Digimap, you can click include grid lines, and then I'll put the grid lines in for you. And ideally, if you can, print them in colour, because it really just stands out a lot better. And we did laminate these. I think they did go missing, but we did laminate them so they could be used over and over with whiteboard markers, which saves some money as well. So this is used to decide where they're going to hide their geocache, their little message, or whatever they want it to be. And then once they've done that, we would come back inside and we would add step 2, which is go and visit your chosen location with your map and worksheet. So I'll show you the worksheet in the next slide, and write down the exact 6-figure grid reference on your Our Secret Geocache booklet worksheet down column 3. So it's very, because it's booklets, it's very specific. And also working with non-specialists with this, the way we plan our lessons is very much full of instructions, full of success criteria and very much step by step, particularly for skills for geography, which I find probably are the most challenging for non-specialists. So for each number of your 6-figure grid reference, you need to create a clue to find a location which has a number there. Now this is obviously going to be given to the other pair who will find the geocache, for example, and then I can show you here. So this is a worksheet, so they'll get this blank, and I've put in just one I made up basically. So they would write down their grid reference of where they're going to hide their geocache down the right-hand column, the third column. Then they need to come up with clues on the left-hand column that direct the people to the number of the grid reference. Hopefully that makes sense. Please feel free to ask questions later if it doesn't. So for example, the shape of the clock here is the same as the number. And where am I talking about? So 118, so they would have to go, which is my classroom. They would look at the size of the shape of the clock in 118, and it's the same as the number, which would be 0. Number 2, the number of chairs outside guidance at the time, because it does change. Where to go, they go to guidance. How many chairs? There are 3. And so on. So how many clocks in the assembly hall? I mean, obviously, some of these I've just made up inside because it was easier, but ideally they are outside as much as possible. So how many clocks in the assembly hall? So they have to go to the assembly hall, and then atrium is where they have their lunch. And again, assembly hall, and then outside you'd have to count the bins. Also, you have to watch that things don't change, otherwise your numbers are a bit skew. But that's the worksheet they have, and then they need to decide what they're going to write on their little message that they're going to hide at that place. And mine was geography rocks, so I would write that down. So that's the worksheet for the pair who are planning their own geocache. So where it is, what their 6-figure grid reference is, and where they're going to hide it. Okay. Now, the next thing is that we hide them in, if we've got enough, these little plastic egg-shaped things from the Kinder eggs. Oh my goodness, I nearly forgot there. From the Kinder eggs. So we try and get as many of them in as possible if staff have any at home. And that's what we give the pairs to hide their little message in, to then hide it in their location. Okay, so they create a message, they put it in the geocache, they put it in a plastic tub, which they will hide at their 6-figure grid reference location next lesson. So this does take 2 lessons. So one lesson is for each pair to create their clues and choose their grid reference using the Digimap map and write their message. And then the following lesson is when they are finding each other's. So if I go back to this worksheet, so the next lesson, each pair will be given a blank one of these worksheets, and on it are given a blank one, but each pair writes down the clues only and location, and then gives it to another pair, and they have to follow the clues, write down the numbers for the grid reference, and then go and find the other pair's geocache. Now, it can be a little bit enthusiastic by the students because they are outside, so it does take a bit of confidence that you're happy with, allowing the students to sort of wander within boundaries. So you do have to, give boundaries and set times and, things like that within the playground. And it very much is, this is step 1, this is step 2 and step 3, because it can get confusing with them who's got which sheet. But the sheet that is given to on the second lesson is just the one with the clues and the location and without the 6-figure grid reference. That's up to them to figure out and then go and find using the map, the Digimap as well to help them. Okay, so hopefully that was fairly clear. We do try and do this lesson as much as possible, but it is kind of an extra optional one because it does depend on size of your class and behaviour of your class and time of day. We also have a split lunch, so if younger ones are having this lesson when seniors are out in the playground, you know, maybe that's not the best time. So it is an optional one, but it is good fun. And if you want more detailed instructions and information, as I say, it is in the autumn 2017 Geographical Association's journal. Okay, I'll move on. So I'll obviously take questions at the end, but I'll move on to the S2 one example, which is from our topic of violent volcanoes. And this is quite a new one that we've only done this once. And I planned it because I found at S2 we didn't really do much map skills, Ordnance Survey map skills. And I did feel, you know, we do have Digimaps, Digimap for Schools subscription, so I felt we should use it more and more. So this one's about Arthur Seat. And again, I've planned this for non-specialists, particularly because it's maps, but it's also using software that maybe they've never used before. Okay, so we're also combining information to do with tourism, which is their other topic in S2, Wish You Were Here. So again, bring the two topics together, so violent volcanoes and tourism, and map work as skills. So it's kind of linking everything together, ideally, hopefully. So this one is where they would go to the website. They would have the username and password sitting there and searching Arthur Seat. And all I've done is wee screenshots or, you know, print screen, and I've just popped them on the website so everybody can see what they're looking for, particularly if they are non-specialists. And then here, I'm getting them to look at the wonderful extra part of Digimap, which is actually looking at previous years. So you can see there, you can have Ordnance Survey or you can have aerial, which is great, like a photograph. But you can also see the map from 1950s and 1890s, which is great. And it brings in history as well. So we teach S1 and S2 social studies. So I will teach a topic of geography, history, modern studies, and RMPS, and then go back to the beginning and teach another one. So it's very much do this, you know, one thing. So click on map selector, then click the right-hand side circles to look at 1890s, 1950s, and compare how the land use around a dormant volcano has changed. So looking at land use, but also looking at the different types of volcanoes that you can get as well, which is nice to be cross-curricular with history. And the task is to write down 3 ways that the land use has changed over the years. So what's still there, what has gone, what has been added, and why do you think the land use has changed? So a little bit of critical thinking brought into there as well. Okay, so once they've done that, I then ask them to find the most up-to-date Ordnance Survey map. So, and then zoom in to make it look like that. Okay, now in our council, so Midlothian Council, all students have been given a Chromebook. So this is very straightforward to use, and also I wanted to use Digimap more because we have the Chromebooks, and I know not everywhere has that. So ideally, hopefully this still works on if you have PCs or if you have iPads of some sort. So it really just depends on what digital equipment your school actually have. We happen to be very lucky by having Chromebooks. So in pairs or individually, you are now going to plan a walk up Arthur's Seat using the information on the next slide. So this is where it comes in with the drawing tools and the key as well. So this is a walking route success criteria and task. Now I'm going to play a little bit of a video, which I really hope works. Denise and I have checked that it does work. So my next instructions for the teacher and students was now watch and listen to the videos Miss Conlan has made here. So those are 2 hyperlinks that would take you to those videos. And it allows the non-specialist teacher to not have to give all the instructions of what to do, because I've done it as a video, and I am no tech whiz whatsoever, but I can at least do a screen. So I think I did a screencastify, but in Midlothian we also use We Video, so WE and then video, all one word. which is similar because Screencastify started to charge people, I think, after 10 Screencastifys. Now we're not going to use WeVideo anymore because Google have now come up with something called Google Videos, I think, Google Vids, I think, or videos. So we're starting to use that from next year. So it does seem to change, but the idea is basically what we're doing now, you talk over something, whether it's Screencastify or not, recording your screen, a bit like what's happening at the minute. So I'll show you a little bit of part one and obviously hear my own voice, but I'm sure it'll be fine. So success criteria is choose your starting location where you can park your car. So that's using the key. So they got to know the cars, the car parking symbols, or park and ride symbol possibly. Your walk should follow a footpath and not be too steep. So there's your footpath from the key, but also your contour lines and your heights, as some parts of Arthur Street are quite dangerous and have loose rocks. Visit at least one place with historical interest, so that's your curriculum link with history, and your key is again visit a viewpoint, so that's me being quite specific that they need to find a viewpoint and know what it is. Stop somewhere for a picnic, so that could be a picnic symbol or it could be an area of flatter land, again that's contour lines, and then return safely to your car, so back to the beginning but along a footpath, so they can't just go anywhere. So I'm just going to come out my PowerPoint and show you a little bit of part one of my Screencastify, hopefully, if it works. Here we go. So fingers crossed everybody can see it and hear it. Hi everyone, this is a wee video to help you with the Digimaps work for Arthur's Seat. So on the slide it mentions zooming in so that you can see Arthur's Seat to look like this with some map symbols on. So if you go back to Digimaps, if you go to the right hand side and zoom in, you can go in. That's probably a little bit too far, but if you go a wee bit back, you can certainly see your map symbols that you need for your planning the walk. Now, we go back to the slide and here is the success criteria. So here we've got the success criteria for your walk that you're going to do in possibly pairs or groups. And the first one is to choose your starting location where you can park your car. Now, if you're not sure about map symbols, okay, then we can go up here where it says key. We can click there, okay. There's a list of all the headings of all the map symbols. Now, if you want to expand all, and then it gives you all the symbols and the pictures of every map symbol that you need. Okay, so if you can't remember, just have a look there. We're looking for a car park, which as we know is the blue square with the white P. But if you weren't sure, you could scroll down and it would be in amongst these blue tourist ones, and there's park in there. So we have a choice. So you might start your walk up here, or there, or down here, and you've got one to the south as well, near Duddingston Loch. So you've got 4 choices. So that's number 1 on your success criteria. Number 2 is your walk should follow a footpath and not be too steep, as some parts of Arthur's Seat are quite dangerous and have loose rocks. So we're looking at our contour lines. We're looking at how steep the land is. Again, you can zoom in if you want to. Okay, so if we want to get rid of the key, we want to go to drawing tools, and we want to ideally, you could put a wee marker if you want to, so you can click here, choose a wee marker. I'm going to put a little balloon, okay, wee balloon, and I'm going to say I'm going to start at this car park here. So there's a wee balloon. So I just clicked there and it appeared. Okay, now when you're choosing your walk, if you want to zoom in a little bit so you can see the footpaths, again, if you're not sure what a footpath is, get rid of the drawing tools, open the key, go down, find footpath. So here's a track or drive. So you've got that one. Or if you scroll down, you should see footpath here. So the green dashed line or a black dashed line. And as you can see around Arthur's Seat, there are many footpaths that you could follow. So we're going to go back to the drawing tools. We're going to use the line. Right, I'm just going to pause it there so you get the idea. So again, I can share these with you or afterwards, that's fine. So there was 2 parts to it, but you can see how easy it is just to pause it as a, from a non-specialist point of view, teacher, pause it. The students could do the bit I've just explained on the video, and then they could play it, do the next bit and so on. So I'm hoping that it was good. I need to go through feedback from staff about this, and I do hope that they, they did feel they'd benefited from me doing a screencastify. So if you can do wee videos like that, particularly with Digimap website, it is really useful. But I learned, because I had to know what I was doing, because I hate making mistakes on these videos. So it was just making sure that I knew beforehand how to do it, and then I had to make the video to teach other people. And they do say that, don't they, that the best way to learn something is to teach somebody else. So that one's a work in progress. We've done it once, and I think we need to, next year, hopefully, we'll do it again. And also, we often share classes, so I happen to not teach this particular lesson because the other teacher taught that class that time, so I haven't even done it. But I do hope it did help. So screencastifies are a little bit nerve-wracking because you're so bothered about getting it wrong, but they're good fun. And you just have mistakes, and you just, don't worry about it. I wouldn't start again. I would just keep talking the best you can. So that's the end of the S2 one. So that would be year 8 for England. And then my last example is S3, so about year 9. And this is for the Rivers to Oceans topic that we start with in August. And it's also part of the exam board, so the SQA's Scottish Studies qualification. So we do that in school here, where there's a geographical element to it, so I can only either choose rivers or glaciation. And I find glaciation, although I love the subject, it's quite tricky and quite challenging for S3. So I've chosen rivers, and we teach glaciation in S4. And as I say, I might change it from rivers to seas and oceans and lengthen it to topics. So a good section on rivers, and then looking at a variety of human and environmental aspects of oceans and seas. I think I'll change that, so that's the plan anyway. So this one is, we start with reviewing our map skills. So this is me doing a wee screenshot of Digimap, looking at Dalkeith. So we're just off the map, Lasswade High, but we're following the River North Esk, which you can see at the bottom left of your screen down here. So that's our river that we're going to look at for this topic, because for doing Scottish studies, it has to be a Scottish river. And so I like to look at local place. So, and hopefully it makes it more interesting for them, but also it's a little bit easier because it's more familiar to them. So we review our map skills. So we might do more grid referencing, although I feel like I've cropped off the numbers there. I need to fix that. Map skills, maybe scale, contour lines, so we just do a little bit of a Q&A session. But also looking at meanders, confluences, floodplain if there is one, all these physical river features, and see if they can find those on a map as well. So I always start with a wee introduction and links back to S1 topic, the looking outwards, and S2 they'll have done one called planning a canoe journey, which involves OS maps. So it's kind of a review, but it's a nice screenshot there of the Digimap OS map. So they have the link, and what we do first of all is we have a look at photographs I've taken. So I do like to include snaps, and whether it's holiday snaps or just photographs I've taken when I've gone for a walk. So there's the link, and the first task is, can you find map evidence of the following photos on the OS map? And again, I like to start historically, so a bit of crossover there, 1890s and 1950s. So our area nearby where we are was renowned for paper making, and there's no mills left, but there are parts of mills. So there's a wall from a mill, and it has a wee plaque there. So I want them to find, is there any evidence of paper making in the historical maps? Because obviously we have none now. And then that's actually the plaque there that tells them about the paper making in the area. So we start with historical land use, but the Scottish Studies qualification wants us to be more recent. So we do move on to recent land use, but I do like to start with a wee bit of history. And sometimes you don't realise things are there. So for example, in part of the nearby town of Pennycook, there's actually a memorial to prisoners of war from Napoleonic Wars that were taking place, and they actually held prisoners up here, which I doubt anybody knows. But again, it's can they find the map evidence on Digimap for Schools OS map in the present day map. So they've moved from the 1890s, 1950s, and then to 2025. So can they find that monument? And again, I haven't put it on here, but there is a photograph of the more zoomed in bit of history on the plaque there. So I think it's great. I love going back in time and doing a bit of history linked with the geography, because history is a popular subject in our school, and also I do teach it with an S1 and S2 as well, so it's good to link them together. I hope I'm not going too fast. I'm just wary of time, so apologies. So this is activity for once we've looked at and reviewed our mapping skills. So again, they go onto the website, the login and password would be there, and we're looking at how it's changed over the years as well. So so typing in the street name. So hopefully by the time they get to S3, if they've done it S1 and S2, this should be the norm. So I'm trying to get it that using Digimap and OS maps are the norm in their social studies or geography lessons. It's not something that just appears in their exam in S4. And they always like to find their house. So we start with finding their house, which most of them live near the River North Esk, so that's why we do this. But they always want to find their house first, don't they? So I thought to myself, why not just get them to do it? So in the search box, type in your street name or village or town. This will give you a detailed OS map of where you live, and then I want them to go between the maps. So just leave them for 5-8 minutes, having a wee potter on Digimap website, looking for their own house, their grand's house or sister's house, and then comparing it to 1890s and 1950s, fading between them to see what's appeared, what's not, what's disappeared. Then moving on to the River North Esk and the River Esk, which is the confluence of the North Esk and the South Esk, becomes the River Esk. And then trying to get them to encourage them to look at land uses. So what are the human uses? So they found their house and the settlement that they live in, but now can they see the mills? Can they see the railway line, the railway stations, the castles, any large houses? So thinking about using the maps and focusing more on land uses that are current, because that's what they need for their qualification. Now at the top here, you can see I've got L3.13 and a wee picture of a passport. Now, in Scotland, we have benchmarks. I don't know if England, if you still call them level descriptors, but I used to work in England and they were called level descriptors. They're kind of similar. So knowledge and skills that they have to be able to do, you know, in S1, S2 and 3. So this one is to do with mapping and using different types of maps is level 3.13. And the wee passport just reminds us that I have to mark this bit of work and they have to tick off that benchmark if they pass it. So that's what that means. And normally, which I have not done on this one, but normally I would write underneath what the benchmark is, because I'm terrible at remembering them all, because there's too many. So that's the mapping part. Then we bring it all together, and this bit is for the Scottish Studies Outcome 2.4. So this is a bit that gets assessed against criteria from the exam board. So they have to create an informative tourist leaflet to promote the River North Esk as a route to walk along. So thinking about tourism. You're going to research some local geography along the River North Esk, in particular the human land uses of the river and the land which it flows through. So that's 2.4. It's all about land use. So describing at least 2 land uses, a conflict between the land uses and a possible solution. Okay, so they've got a variety of information there, including the Digimap website. And this is what I give them. So I can only do so much because it's exam board assessment work. So I give them the task outline, success criteria of what I'd like to be in the leaflet, and a couple of websites that may be useful should they choose the land uses. You know, they might want to choose Dalhousie Castle, which is a hotel, and they might decide to choose the National Mining Museum as well. So that's more scaffolding to just help people a wee bit if they're a bit stuck of which land uses to choose. Just going to check my notes. You can read that just for a minute or two. Make sure I've not forgotten anything. Yes, so the success criteria links to 2.4, the outcome 2.4. So number 2, number 3, and number 4 are the ones that they have to pass to achieve the outcome at level 5, and if they pass number 2 and 3, they would get a level 4, which is similar to a Nat 4. So that's how I use Digimap in S3, and I would like to again include it more in any way I can. But S3 is a bit easier because that's taught by myself and one other geography teacher or business teacher. So I haven't done screencastifys for S3 because it's specialist teachers that are teaching that, so it makes it a wee bit easier to do. So that's my 3 examples, which I hope you found useful, and I hope I haven't gone too fast. As a teacher, I think I talked too quick, but hopefully it's been okay and you found it useful. So future plans for using Digimap is orienteering. So we had a wee chat with the local orienteering organisation ESOC last year to try and get an orienteering route within the school grounds. So I want to do something along, I know they have specific maps, but you know, can we combine the two? That's kind of my thoughts. Ideally using Digimap in every topic that we have, if I can bring it in some way, so that skills and mapping and maps and going outside is the norm for every year group. And also I'm going to be lead for Nat 4, Nat 5 travel and tourism qualification from June. So I'm going to bring in Digimap website into travel and tourism lessons as well. Thinking about places to visit and why, so what map skills, what map symbols are there, and why would tourists visit them, and things like that. So that's kind of my plan for future curriculum development. So I would just like to say thanks for listening, and any questions.